welcome to the Wednesday, May 10th, 2017 Planning and Zoning meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a citizen advisory group to the City Council. They are charged with making recommendations concerning land use plans, planning processes, and/or on matters of plan implementation. All regular meetings of the Planning and Zoning are quasi-judicial in nature and are recorded for record retention and minute transcription. Prior to this meeting, an agenda clarification meeting was held at 6 o'clock. The agenda for this evening will go as follows. Item number 1 will be roll call and disclosure of conflict of interest, ex parte communication, and site visit. Let's go ahead and go forward with that. Aislinn, if you would call roll, and if each member of the commission would state their name and anything that they need to disclose as far as site visits or conflict of interest.
Jack Brennan.
My name is Jack Brennan. I live in the Johnny Creek area. I did make a site visit to agenda items 3 and 4, and I have nothing else to report.
Hancock.
My name is Bill Hancock. I live in the Fremont Heights area. I have nothing else to report.
Jack Moore.
My name is Jack Moore, and I live in between Main Street and Arthur, on down past over by the Idaho State Journal. And I made a site visit to both agenda item 3 and 4, and nothing else to report.
Sarah O'Connor.
Hi, I'm Sarah O'Connor. I live in the University neighborhood, and I have nothing to disclose.
Ryan Satterfield.
And I'm Ryan Satterfield from the Highland area. I did a site visit on item number 4 and have nothing else to report. Okay, with that, we will move to agenda item number 2, approval of minutes. Has the commission been able to review that? And if so, any comments, corrections, or motions?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved by Hancock, seconded by Brennan to approve the minutes. Aislinn, would you call the roll?
Brennan.
Yes.
Hancock.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Satterfield.
Yes. Okay, now to agenda item number 3, preliminary plat, Countryside Subdivision, 8th edition. Kelly Marie Swisher and Ken Swisher and Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying have submitted a request to subdivide approximately 3.06 acres in 7 residential lots located on an extension of Mountain Shadow connecting Foxmore Street. The land is located in a residential low-density zoning district. And so if we could start with that and hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Brady Smith, Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, 600 East Oak Street, Pocatello, Idaho. I see several new faces up there. Some of you, like Jack and Ryan, may remember 7th edition a couple years back. And just to give you a little bit of visual where we're at, this is Country Club Drive coming up that feeds into the Countryside Subdivision. And initially, the plan for this last connection was going to be done all in one phase, and with logistics on financing and other things, it ended up being split into 2 phases. So we're now proceeding with the final phase, which will actually connect Foxmore into the existing subdivision, and with doing that, it will make that final connection with the water system. Sewer will actually continue to come up a little ways into this road, but ultimately we'll still head down Foxmore and out that way. Stormwater was actually done and completed in in 7th edition, the previous edition. So this final leg here won't require anything in that regard. We have reviewed the staff comments, and the only one that I would mention is comment 18 in the staff report, which we have met with staff currently, and we are looking to a resolution there. So we're working forward on everything else we are in agreement with. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Brady, where is the storm water retention?
So the stormwater retention pond is actually a system that houses, or that sits right down here along Country Club. You can kind of see this long-shaped green area.
Okay.
And basically, it's all a connected system throughout the subdivision, and we're just connecting into that. And then we have made some improvements to this pond. In the last edition, we added an access road and what we call a forebay, where we kind of dredged out the existing materials that had kind of came in over the years and done kind of a renewal cleaning on it to get the storage capacity back to what was planned in the original design.
Brady, do you have concerns with this item number 18 as far as the water line goes, with finding a solution with the city staff?
Preliminary indications are it's a doable thing. I think it's mostly just making sure that adjoining properties are on board as well, because it obviously makes no sense to just provide an easement that has no way to go. So if the easement for this, wasn't, or was granted and then it didn't go any further into the adjoining property, it would kind of make no sense. So I think the only real and I wouldn't even call it an issue, because we've talked with staff and it was a very positive meeting, is just the time it takes to get all the proper notifications to the different property owners on what's feasible. So.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brady, on that stormwater system, so how it gets to that retention pond is through storm drain systems that take it over there?
Correct.
Integrate it throughout?
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you,
All right,
Brady.
thank you.
And if we could have staff presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commission members. Matthew Lewis, Planning Division Manager. Not a whole lot to on this one. In a planning point of view, it's residential, zoned residential low density. That means that your minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet. The smallest lot in this subdivision is proposed to be 10,436 square feet, and the largest 32,062 square feet, so they meet all the lot size requirements. Brady mentioned the stormwater, which has been designed, I think probably in 6 or 7, one of those additions, and so this was anticipated with that. And then this will just finish off Foxmore in that whole loop system. Staff recommends approval. The conditions are outlined in Exhibit 1, which are from Public Works, Development, Engineering. And as you know, Merrill touched on the biggest one as far as conditions are concerned are 18, and that seems to be workable. I know that they met with the developer yesterday and with RMES, and so it sounds like that's going to be workable. Other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Any questions for Matt?
I just have a question on what Brady talked about. If the water line can't go across the adjacent property, which I believe is owned by Mr. Akers, what then?
Merrill Quell, the Public Works Development Engineer with City of Pocatello. Our water superintendent, as even of yesterday, has talked with Mr. Akers and has still got a verbal that we're going to be able to put that line through there and so forth. So we're hoping to have a little bit more than that, but as of even yesterday, Justin Armstrong has visited, and we are still moving forward and negotiating in there, and that property owner sees the benefit also over on his side with the water pressures and stuff, and is amenable to working with us.
I have a question, Meryl. So is there anything that can be put in place, or I guess under the scenario where, how do we protect the developer if this condition is part of it, if something can't be put in place for this easement to go through? Or in other words, can you tell us that the development won't be held up because of this scenario?
Well, we're working through the negotiations and everything, and I'm assuming by the time they get ready to go to the city council is another month, maybe. Well, I'm hoping to have everything resolved, and Justin and with Mr. Akers to be able to have everything solidified. So I don't think at this time we're not doing that. I would ask just that the recommendation move forward, and as noted too, that there is a possibility that we're looking at too, to split that easement over the property lines instead of all on one side. And if that's the case, and that's which way we can go with our negotiations, and that will reflect in my report as we move on to the city council for that change. So.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? All right, then we'll open it up for any discussion or to entertain a motion.
I would go ahead and motion that we approve the preliminary plat, Countryside Subdivision 8th Edition, subject to the staff's recommendations. I would note in staff's recommendation number 18 that based on what we've heard here today, that I would just simply state that the recommendation be in condition number 18, that instead of being limited to block 2 or 3, that it be changed to simply reflect block 2 and 3, with the possibility being maybe an and or. Does that make sense, to show that it could go between both or one or the other, depending on how they work it out with the developer moving forward? I'm sorry, that's a very long way to put it, but I hope that that makes some sense.
How would you like me to?
That with the adoption of the staff recommendations, with a change in recommendation number 18 to state on the second line through lot 2 and /or 3 block 2. That being the only change that I'd recommend to the staff's conditions.
So basically, we're putting the word and to lot 2 and block 2.
And or, and/or.
To reflect that we understand that it's going forward, that it could be between both lots or one or the other, depending on how they work it out with the developer.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Okay, so motion by Hancock, second by Brennan. Ethan, will you call the vote?
Brennan?
Yes.
Hancock?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
Satterfield?
Yes. All right, motion carries. Now agenda item number 4, public hearing, zoning map amendment. This time has been set aside for the commission to hear comments from the public regarding a request by Ruth S. Decker, represented by RMES, for a zoning map amendment for the property between Bertie Thompson and East Terry Street, specifically land lying between 2302 and 2350 East Terry Street. The request is to rezone the property from residential estate to residential low density. The property has a comprehensive plan map designation of residential. So if we could hear from the applicant.
Good evening, commission members. My name is Mitchell Greer. I'm with Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, 600 East Oak here in Pocatello, representing the applicant. So what we have here is kind of an overview of the zoning and the area that we're looking to rezone. You can see by the variety of colors there's a number of different zones in this area. This green, which includes part of the subject parcel that we're talking about, is currently a residential estate zoning designation. And I think most of the reason for that designation was the terrain. This yellow, which encompasses part of our property, is a residential low density designation. And then we've got this red, which is a high density designation. We've got some RCP area, which is shown in the purple. And then across the street, I think, is like a light industrial or something, more of a commercial light industrial. So there's a whole different gamut of zoning in this area. And with that, I'm just going to shut that little piece of information off. If we need to go back to it, I can, but I want to shut all the zoning part off. And so if you can just picture our property, which is kind of surrounded here, and I'm showing a layout in the background. We're not considering the layout, but just consider the boundary of this property. And I want to speak to the zoning line, and you can kind of see it here in this blue right here. So what we have is a little bit of a unique situation in that we have a piece of property that is bounded or has two zones within it. And so that's kind of that's something that we don't run into very often. But what happened is, they just basically drew some lines on the map that kind of made sense as to where they went. They didn't necessarily follow the terrain, which was intended, but there is steep areas there for sure, and we're aware of those steep areas. And if we can kind of tilt the map, and you can maybe see some of the relief. But down here, obviously this is all steep area that kind of wraps around and comes down around in this area. And if you've driven up there, you can kind of see that ground. So what we're saying is that we believe, and our layout kind of predicts that we can capture a few units, about 4 or 5 twin home units in this area that are buildable and can be serviceable for residential homes. And so without the zone change, basically we'd be allowed a single family residence in that area. We're trying to do a twin home project, individual owners with an association maintained type project. And so that is the need for the zoning. So a residential estate zoning does not allow a twin home. And if we are not allowed the zoning, then we're either going to lose ground that could be developed, or we're going to have to put in single family, which isn't really consistent with the project that they'd like, or that our clients would like to propose. So this project is very consistent with what's around it. All the homes along Bertie Thompson are twin homes. We have some single family along in the Somerset subdivision that's up above, and there's quite a bit of relief between our project that acts as kind of a natural buffer. This kind of sits up on top of the ridge, and then we're down on kind of a lower area of the ridge. So there's a natural buffer there. There's really kind of a couple single families and then apartments and twin homes down along Terry Street, which probably wouldn't be allowed in the current zoning. And then, again, we have high density and some more business type oriented projects. So I think I know when you're looking at zoning a large area and things like that, it's hard to really take into account all the different features of the maps and things like that. And so we just believe that the line should have been drawn a little differently on this piece, and that's really what it comes down to. And that's basically my presentation. If you have questions, I'd certainly answer them.
Any questions?
Is that portion of the ground that's that abuts Buckskin, where it's real steep, would there be any plans to build some more apartments or?
No. On that?
That would just be open space?
Yeah, that's going to be open space. Our proposal, when it comes, and I thought I submitted it, but we've got to come forward with the preliminary plat. Our proposal is to leave that open space. We are going to put a stormwater pond down in there right along Terry or Buckskin or whatever it is at that location, but a stormwater pond, and then it'll just remain open. There'll be no more development on that piece. The remainder of all that steep ground. And we've gone through a couple iterations on how that stormwater pond's going to fit in there, and we're not final on that yet, but that's what we're looking at.
Any other questions for Mitch? All right, thank you, Mitch. Staff?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commission members. Matthew Lewis again, Planning Division Manager. So a couple things I'd like to point out is, and Mitch touched on it with regards to why the zoning kind of follows in a, when you look at, I think it's Exhibit 3 in my staff report. Actually, Exhibit 2 in my staff report. You can see the different zoning designations there. Majority of it is residential low density, which encompasses all the Bertie Thompson, Somerset subdivision. And then you have this residential estate that just kind of follows the back, what I call the back portion of that section between the first parcel that abuts Bertie Thompson and then down to Terry Street. So my guess was that that was probably a carryover from our previous zoning, which is somewhat complicated, that used open space factors, and one of the big criteria that was used for open space factoring, there's 5 of them, but topography was one of the ones that was always given quite a bit of weight. And on Exhibit 3, the exercise that I tried to conduct and show the commission and show myself was exactly what the average grades were, and you can see that really a majority of the properties are, especially on the front portion, where Mitch is shown this conceptual, where even with that cul-de-sac, the way that it ends, and then the other one, it really falls primarily into the 6.5 and 6.8 areas, and then a little bit over in the 13.8. And the steepest part is in that southeast corner there. So if you want to visit his site and you're at Terry, it's pretty prominent right there. You can see exactly where the high point was. So with that exercise, what it showed to me was that was probably the case, that they just kind of, at the time, just followed the line of topography of sorts. But even with that, when you look at other subdivisions, there's numerous ones that are zoned residential low density that have very similar topography and so forth, that this fits that criteria for a change. If it's zoned from residential estate to residential low density, the only thing that it opens it up to are 2 things, or 2 land uses, and that is townhomes and then 2 family dwelling units, which I believe there's 46 townhomes that are on Bertie Thompson Drive, and then you have high density that is right to the west of that, and then the rest are single family. So with that, I'm just going to kind of flip through this, and that was a little bit of, I cut a lot of my presentation out there. I'd just like to mention that there's an 8-inch sewer line that's located under Terry Street. Water and sewer is also in Bertie Thompson. That's probably where any extension would occur. Access would be from Bertie Thompson, and not off Terry because of the topography there. And notice was provided to property owners within 300-foot radius of the subject property. Signage was posted on the site both on Bertie Thompson and on Terry Street. Notice was published in Idaho State Journal as required. Several phone calls were received by staff regarding the request. No correspondence has been received as of the beginning of this meeting. So as a synopsis, the applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property from residential estate to residential low density. Approval of the rezoning will allow possible construction of townhomes and two-family dwelling units which are not out of character with surrounding developments. Staff's analysis finds that the overall topography is not significantly different from other areas that are zoned residential low density, such as Juniper Reserve Subdivision, Trail Creek Estates, and most of Satterfield developments. Based on these findings, staff recommends approval of the rezoning request from residential estate to residential low density. And just like to remind the commission that that you're simply making a recommendation and then also adding the chair to sign the findings of fact and recommendation. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? All right, thank you. With that, we will now open the public hearing, and we will start, given the number of people here, if there are if there's anyone that would like to make a public comment on this. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Okay, public hearing's closed. Commission, it's open for discussion, or we would also entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, seeing that there's no public comment, it seems pretty straightforward. I would just move that we approve the rezoning request on the subject property from residential estate to residential low density, and that we authorize you as the chair to sign the findings of fact.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Very good. Okay, motion by Hancock, second by Moore. Aislinn, would you call the vote?
Brennan.
Yes.
Hancock.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Satterfield.
Yes. Motion carries. And that concludes our meeting. Thanks.